You are listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Macero and Shelagh Maycheck.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy, that's me, and my co-host, Shelagh.
Hello.
Today, we have special guest Jamie Ruscheinski in from The Property Twins. This is another one of those special topic episodes where we do not have a public guest due to the content. And quite frankly, it's a topic where I specifically requested Jamie from the Property Twins. The reason why is that I host an improv night down at Camp Beer sometimes for the brokerage, and we had him and his team there, and they were answering the hard questions with such grace and professionalism that I could not think of a better person to have on here. So Jamie, thank you for joining us today. Now, divorce season is upon us. It is January, and yes, believe it or not, this is a thing. Before you think I'm speaking in poor taste, I'll review the facts with you. Everyone just had Thanksgiving. Everyone just had Christmas, or most people had Christmas. Maybe they realized they can't do another dinner with Aunt Thelma's baking.
They're pouring the gravy going, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I hate
Yeah,
this.
maybe they're done with their spouse always bossing them around the Christmas tree, or I don't know. Things happen and tensions happen, especially around holidays, okay? And then in January, the bills start rolling in. Is it worth it? Friction becomes at an all-time high in relationships, especially when money gets involved. And then they're driven indoors by the weather, and around the corner, bam, Valentine's Day. And it comes shortly after New Year's Eve, where they're expected to reevaluate their lives. So they're looking ahead at this like big love holiday that gets thrown. We should just move Valentine's Day, I think. Maybe
it's too soon.
It's too soon. It's too soon. And so people have to sit there and think, oh gosh, so I've just had my holidays. I'm not sure about my family. Suddenly there's, New Year's Eve, and then Valentine's Day staring you at the face. And believe it or not, after all those holidays are done, most divorces get filed in March. Kind of sad, isn't it? Am I depressing you guys? To be truthful, divorce is one of the hardest things to do in real estate. Not everybody has a happy reason for selling. And this is one of those topics where it can get messy really, really quickly. It's very, very hard for people to ask for professional advice and go out there with that when marriage could mean so many different things to people. One of the very worst appointments I ever went to was a divorce sale, and the tension and the sadness was so strong in the house, and I had to really suck it up, and I pushed it into my core, and I almost was like a robot, and I did my thing. But at the end, I walked down the street to my car, I got in, and I burst into tears because it was so sad, and it was just so much tension in the house, and you just had to be so stoic. But anyway, I'm not here to depress you. Let's get into the good tea spilling stuff. And of course, we're going to start off with a joke. Shelagh, why are you so funny and I'm not?
Product of childhood divorce.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it's not entirely true.
I've got an older brother, and he's about 5 years older than me. Anytime I tried to make a joke as a kid, he would just kind of look at me with disdain and be like, not good enough. So if I got him to laugh, I knew I did a good job.
That's awesome. So you guys kept each other company.
Yeah, he built my character.
He built your character. So really, this episode is dedicated to Evan.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
Okay. So I've done a few divorce sales, enough to know that you really have to handle these situations with care. And you might always have a plan on how you want to handle these, but that's only if you get notice. So we're going to start today with a tiny little story about one of the divorce situations that I walked into. I didn't have Shelagh with me. I'm very glad you weren't with me at the time. And I walked in, it was a high school friend. I was so excited. And I just, when you do the social media scroll to kind of look at what's going on in their life.
Update.
And I found all these beautiful wedding photos because they had just had a destination wedding and it was so great. And I was psyched that they called me to sell their townhouse, and I walked up the stairs and I saw the husband was there, so good signs, everything's good. And I was like, oh, I just saw your beautiful wedding photos. And
ouch.
Yeah, everything was good until we got upstairs, and she's like, yeah, we're actually splitting up. And I looked at her and I was like, could you not have told me? Like, I felt like I just put my foot in my mouth 10 ways to Sunday downstairs.
Oh, no.
She's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's okay. And I'm like, but the whole time I was just like, wow. that sucks. Like that, I just walked.
Cringe factor of 10.
Oh, and I'm generally pretty smooth in a social way, especially when I'm working, because I'm on, like I know I have to be on, and just all the wind just went out of my sails, and I was like, really, seriously? So that was kind of hard, and they assured me no damage was done, but damn, like that sucked, and it was bad. We recovered, all went well, but it did burn. Sheila, what would you have done in that scenario? Someone just drops a bomb on you, bam.
I'm a crier.
You would have just cried?
No, the second someone else gets to your head, I'm like, oh no, I'm out, I'm done. But yeah, that would have been, it's really awkward and it's embarrassing too, because you're like, I could have totally gone into this from a different angle.
Yes, I had no warning. I had no warning. So now we're starting to get into this spilling of the tea. So Jamie, have you ever gone into a situation where your client has just informed you that they're splitting up and you have like microseconds to react?
I have. I've ran into it a few times in the past, and sometimes it's friends, which is really hard when you've been friends with a couple for a long time, and then you walk in and you sit there, and you have to take it in and try to handle it with grace, but you also have to process. You kind of almost have to do a quick mini grieve and then get to the tough stuff.
Yeah.
And it can be very difficult to handle those situations, and they're somewhat inevitable. You're gonna be in it if you're in real estate. Yeah. It's just a matter of time. What I have learned is I try now to basically do a little bit of exploring ahead of time so that I don't get myself into those decisions. One of the ways I do that is by insisting that all parties on the title are at the initial meeting so that we are all on the same page. And usually what ends up coming out of the woodworks is, well, my husband or my wife won't be able to make it because we aren't actually speaking right now. And then I go, okay, well, I need her phone number then if you guys want to continue to move forward, and then I usually line up a meeting with them back to back, so even my train of thought is on the exact same wavelength, and keep them in separate rooms more or less, but meet them at different coffee shops.
So we don't have a seller's questionnaire, but I wonder if there's something in there that we could do, like the reason for selling up front. I don't know. Would you like your selling meeting to be separate from your current partner? Yes. And you're like, oh no. Like as one of the boxes?
Yeah.
No doubt, yeah.
We would probably have people tick it off just to mess with us too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I like what you just said about mini grief, because when you do get hit with one of those, this is the reason why I'm selling situations, if it's not a happy sale, then absolutely you could be hit with a mini. And I know that I've had to do that. I've had to just suck it up really quickly, tighten it up, and be like, wow, that sucks. And then in your face is like, okay,
Because for some of these people, you've helped move them into the home, and that's always an emotional thing. They're so excited, and it's a happy home. And then down the road, you're getting a call again.
Yeah, and then you get 3 ends. I'm just kidding. That's not the way we look at that. No, but realistically, you have to keep especially if you know both parties, or if you only know one party, you have to keep the relationship good. So it's a good thing to mention. Jamie, have you ever sold a home and realized during or after that it was for the purposes of a divorce, and they just didn't tell you?
I have a story about what was probably a pending divorce. We went to a listing appointment in Aldergrove, my twin brother and I, and the previous night I received a text message at 9:30 at night, which is a little bit late.
It's pretty late. Unusual.
Yeah, right, like a little bit late, and he wants to line up a listing appointment and wants to get the home on the market right away. So he lines it up for when he gets home from work tomorrow at 4:30. Okay, great. We show up at 4:30, ready to go. Chris has his listing presentation ready to go. I've done all my homework. Knock on the door, and he's standing there with a beer in his hand, totally shocked to see us. You could see him processing what was happening.
What happened last night?
And he proceeds to double down and let us into the home. So we head up the stairs, and he's got the 2 young kids, and they're bouncing off the walls. The house is a disaster, and his wife is, no joke, making spaghetti on boiling pot of water on the stove, meat sauce cooking on the side, and she's in it. And she has no idea what's happening. So we go to the dining room, and we sit down, and Chris starts into his listing presentation, not picking up any of the signals at all.
He's a professional.
He's just
like,
in his
I'm
zone.
ready. He's so prepared.
Yeah.
Gonna kill it, gonna make a couple jokes. These people are gonna love me. And the wife is coming, and he yells at his wife to come sit down, and he's still drinking beer. and she sits down, and you can just see that she is absolutely mortified and very, very angry.
Oh.
And Chris's listing presentation goes for about 45 minutes because we talk about our entire marketing presentation. And so he's missing all of it. I'm sitting there just watching the body language, and it was just the most awkward thing I think I've ever sat through.
Oh, no.
And then we finally left, and we went downstairs, and I'm walking out, I'm talking to my brother as we're getting in the truck, and I'm like, how do you think that went? And he goes, I think it went great. He's still completely oblivious.
He's just flattered that
I'm
he was
like,
a drunk
man.
texter.
He's like, I did great.
I'm like, I'm pretty sure he was drunk when he messaged us the night before.
Yeah.
And when they were in a giant fight and threatened, I'm selling the house tomorrow and we're done, and forgot entirely about it the next day.
I just rolled with it.
His wife had to sit through that embarrassment to like the next level, and they shoot us out the door, and we went home. And I'm like, if they're calling to list, I'm like, I don't know if I even want to get into that. That's a tough one.
Yikes.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty
Did
funny.
you end up listing the home?
No.
Okay,
Thankfully, they didn't call. Thankfully, they didn't. There's some listings you just don't want. And
Yeah.
Someone ended up with spaghetti on their head.
We were being used as a pawn in a fight, a big fight.
Oh.
That's all it was. But it was hilarious. It's like sitting through a timeshare presentation, right? When you're sitting at the listing appointment, and
They just want to go to the
they
beach.
just want you
Yeah.
out of the house
Keep an
so
eye
they
on
can
the
go back
exit.
to their life. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sucks.
I like that he was really into it, and you're just ready and watching. You're like, what is happening?
I'm gonna get
here?
through my part really quickly here,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna go. So.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I like that you guys were his first call.
Yeah, the marketing is working. I guess.
Yeah, the marketing is working.
We're popping up peak ad times 9:30 at night. Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Apparently, we're branding all the dumpsters around town as all the dumpster fire relationships.
Yeah.
So,
Symbolic.
Down in the dumps. Yeah.
Have you ever had to co-list a divorce sale? One of my very first transactions was to co-list, or I got offered to co-list it, and it was a very well-known realtor, and I think at that time the property was worth about $280,000, and I said no.
yeah.
I literally said to him, "No, we're not co-listing this." I said, "You don't need to co-list this with me." And I kind of could do that only because I had a court injunction behind me. So I was able to say no, and I sat the spouse down and said, "Look, let's give you a seat at the table while you still have it." And that's the only reason why I was able to just conduct it myself.
Right.
But I was brand new, and I was really like kind of gutsy with this really established realtor that was like, "Oh, like I want to co-list," and I'm just like, "No, man." So.
I don't need you.
Yeah, I don't need you. Have you
Yeah.
ever had a co-list?
I'm similar to you. I have, but I don't like co-listing, and I'll drop the listing before I co-list if I can,
Right.
unless I trust the other realtor. I'm not about to tarnish my name because they're using me to look good on the other side, or
Right.
vice
Yeah.
versa. You're almost negotiating not only against the buyer, but you're also negotiating against one of the sellers, trying to. Sometimes they're trying to muddy the water. Sometimes they don't want the house
Yeah.
to sell. Sometimes they're living in that house while the other one's paying for it, and they want to stay in that home as long as possible. So they make it extremely tough on the other side. So when I do get when somebody does say, "Hey, do you want to co-list?" I politely decline, and then I do my thing and say, "Hey, we have a full team that can handle this, no problem."
Right.
I don't like working with other agents because they don't have the marketing plan that we do, and they don't roll things out the way we do. The bottom line is, I will make sure everything is 100% fair. I will only communicate in a group chat. I will
Yes.
only communicate with you both during a conference call. There will be no sidebar communication
Yeah.
whatsoever, so you know that it's going to be as fair and amicable as possible. If not, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And then I leave it at that. And if they don't go with me, totally fine with that. But most
You
of
lay
the
out
time,
the rules
most of the
ahead of
time they
time.
do.
Yeah, they
most
set
of
the
the time they do.
stage.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's important. It's kind of strange you're saying, so it kind of depends on the realtor on the other side, because we've heard stories of realtors that co-list with other realtors and they just take it as a free ride.
Right.
Like, that's, like say David Smith, for example. That's David Smith. He's got this marketing plan. He's a bigger name. So I'm just going to ride the coattails and then pick up my side of the check when it's all said and done.
You got it.
Yeah.
So you get one half of the coin that does all the work. And a lot of people think, realtors, y'all do the same thing, but there's a very different disparity between
There's a lot of variety.
quality and variety, like even from the kind of photographers that are used, the kind of floor plans that are out there, because there are, believe it or not, good quality floor plans and poor quality floor plans. So you want to get agents of the same caliber, which sounds kind of like I'm talking like a hierarchy system or something like that, but it's very important that if you are going to pick you're going to pick agents to work with you. If you do have to have separate representation, the agents also need to be on the same page, which...
Yeah, because I think there can be definitely a circumstance where there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
Kind of too many personalities involved, and you're like, it makes it not as smooth as it could go.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I was in a home that this home was so beautiful. And it was a divorce sale, really crushed me because it was just such a nice house. And I had to go around the house and talk about the house. And I had to be very specific with my language. And a lot of realtors don't realize when you're handed a divorce sale, your language has to change instantly. So when I went in there and I wanted to gush about the house and I wanted to be like, oh, it's so beautiful. And these kids' rooms are so cute and what a beautiful home. All that had to change. I had to say, robot words like, in this market, you will, get the peak out of your asset. Mm-hmm. I believe that these rooms have adequate lighting and closets to provide a good space for someone. Like I had to be so cold. I couldn't paint the dream for somebody else.
Yeah.
I had to be kind of colder about it and kind of talk about the property so specifically. And you don't use the H word. Like you can't call it a home because home is a positive word. Yeah. So instead it becomes an asset or a property or, so I'm finding that I had to do that. It's very hard. Do you ever find, Jamie, that there are trigger words or kind of like no words to use during a divorce sale? Have you ever been put in a situation where that's come up?
Yeah, like it's even when you're doing the write-up, in the realtor comments below, and it's like it's tough because you're like, you go to rate the typical family home or forever home, and you're like, oh, there's going to be a knife in their side reading this stuff, but you're also hired to sell their home. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you do have to be very careful about things, trigger words especially. But it's one thing I try to avoid when I do find out it's a divorce sale entirely is talking about divorce. And don't try to relate. Doesn't matter if they don't care if you went through a divorce, they're going through a divorce right now. They don't care if your parents were divorced. They don't want to hear about that. Don't try to relate. Keep it simple. Get in, do the job, and get out. And be somewhat stoic about it because that's all they want. They don't want they have their friends and their family for
they don't want your emotional baggage with it. They're dealing with enough.
100%. Yeah.
It said that Canadians do that. They like tell a worse story to make your story feel better. Like, oh, you think your divorce is bad?
my cousin Jimmy, it was real bad.
This isn't so bad. Like, it's not going to help anything. Yeah. You're totally right. So again, just professional in and out. Like, know your core values, and don't try to relate. That's a really good
point.
It's a really good piece of advice.
Because it can almost be like a habit. You're like, oh, I have a story similar to yours. And like, please no.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So I had, I was sitting down and we were filling out listing papers and we were talking about inclusions and exclusions. And they had a microwave that was not built in. I said, okay, is there any items in this home that is staying? Is there anything screwed in? Because I got to that part of the contract. And these are things that you want to talk about ahead of time. And I asked if the microwave was staying or not. Well, it was like a grenade went off in the room.
Oh, no.
Wife had to get up, go to the bathroom in private, sob while I was sitting there with the husband. So now I figured out who the hurt party is.
Right.
And he's like, oh, don't worry. She'll be fine. Just give her a minute. And I'm like... okay. And how do you make small talk? Like, oh, it's sunny out. Like, what do you say when that's happening? And then she just got it together, came back to the table, and we continued the conversation. Yeah. But it was like literally a grenade dropped in the room. And I was like, oh my God, I had to get through it.
Yeah. It's like little trap doors and you step on one, you're like, oh, there it is. Yep.
Yeah. Do you ever have items that it comes down to where people because you're not a furniture salesman. So, is there any kind of inclusions or anything that kind of comes down to that one party wants it or one doesn't and there ends up being kind of more of a fight or? Yeah,
luckily I haven't really come across that too much. I've had those situations where one certain thing triggers the other party to walk out of the room. But really, no, I haven't come across that much. I make it kind of perfectly clear by my presence being there, only talking about the house, and I'm not a furniture salesman, and that it doesn't really come up. Sometimes in the end, when you get that awkward phone call from the buyer's agent
Yeah.
that we want to include someone in furniture on an addendum now and buy that off them because we really like their stuff, and then you're like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
Sometimes then you get into it a little bit, but really I haven't come across it too much. So
That's good. It might be all about knowing your audience at that point.
Yeah.
You know, is the furniture up for debate or not? Because sometimes people are downsizing or they're going to different places where they can't take it with them, and maybe they don't want it. Or
Yeah.
I can guarantee you they're not fighting over the wedding gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be like, that's
Maybe
from your
that's what the
aunt, and
microwave
I hated
was,
it
right?
all the time.
Yeah.
Get rid of the punch bowl. They can have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good time for a yard sale, maybe.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an amicable split? Like with the one that I did where the girl kind of surprised me upstairs and was like, oh, actually, we're splitting up. That was totally amicable. Like they were really good to deal with. I didn't have to worry about anything. It was very straightforward. There was no drama. I was
Everyone on the same page.
Yes, I was very fortunate. Have you ever had one where it's just easy breezy?
Smooth. Yeah, I actually recently had one. We helped them find a house, and our team was called back to come help them sell it, and it was sad for us because we our clients turned into our friends a lot of times.
Yeah.
But they were very mature about the whole thing. And never saw any animosity towards each other or anything. Maybe they realized at one point they both loved each other, and that's they were it helps when they're a little bit more mature about the whole situation.
Right.
Basically, the younger the relationship, the tougher it can be a little bit too. So they were just both very kind and nice people to begin with. Always.
So they just high-fived and parted ways.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
One of our clients, I remember a couple years ago, they were purchasing the house that they were buying. It was a divorce sale, but it was an amicable split. They had a child, and the realtor on the other end was helping them each buy
Yes.
the two separate places because they wanted to still stay within a certain distance to each other, so it was easy kid handoff, and they could still be involved in their lives to a certain extent.
And our buyers had quite a unique story. They've had a horrific road, would be the right way to say it. And they were coming together, and they had these like beautiful children, and they really wanted to write a letter about who they were buying. But sometimes when people are selling a divorce sale, the last thing they want to hear.
I never even thought about that. That could
Family.
backfire big time.
Yeah. So I always say, if it's an unhappy sale and you know that it's a not happy sale, don't talk about how great your life is going when you're about to, especially in a multiple offer situation, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But in that situation, it worked out for them because everyone was happy.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a buyer buy a divorce sale where it gets kind of weird on the other end?
Oh yeah, and I was a fairly new agent at the time,
Oh.
and a friend of mine had called me, and him and his wife were looking for a home, and they found this big beautiful house in Cloverdale, and we went into it, and it was. You could tell it was a divorce sale. It was all female clothes hanging and all the pictures were removed off the walls. Like the nails were still sticking up. There's some signs.
Yeah.
That's a tell. It's a tell for
You're
sure.
like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And she was fairly rough on the house a little bit. But the house is beautiful. The yard, needed work. It had been let go, but he was good with that. So we wrote an offer, and it was co-listed. There's another sign that it's probably a divorce.
Yeah.
It was co-listed, but we were very worried that when I started hearing back that the wife had been squatting in the house and the husband had been trying to get her out of there, and there'd been domestic violence happening in the home. There's holes punched in the walls, so on and so forth. It was pretty ugly. And so I had spoken to the lawyer for some advice first, and what we did is we wrote a holdback in for $25,000. I believe it was 25, which was a lot of money back then because it was a monstrous house for 650, I think it was.
Right.
Somewhere around
Yeah.
there. Like it was back when I started in real estate. So that's a pretty huge holdback. And the way it was written in was we got to use the money to renovate and fix anything that was wrong with the house, and that was it.
Right.
And we negotiated as much as they dropped down, and then we slid this addendum in, and they both realtors on the other end just accepted it, which was great.
Wow.
It's almost like they knew.
Yeah. They're like,
I would have done this too.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was good because they moved in, and sure enough, she had painted the whole basement black and destroyed the house, let the carpets go, let everything go, and so they had the money to fix it. Like literally, they're pulling in with their truck, and the husband is driving down the street and with a truck full of stuff moving out, and apparently like she's screaming at him as she's getting into her car and stuff. Like it was a tough one. I don't know if there's mental health issues or what, but they moved in, the buyers moved in and took the 25 grand, and they were super good about it. They didn't spend the whole $25,000. It didn't quite take that much to fix it. And then they returned the rest of the money back to those sellers,
wow.
which is really
Love
amazing
that.
after kind of being left with the shitty end of the stick moving in, right? So,
Yeah. I noticed even when I bought my house, it wasn't a happy sale, and the house was just trashed, like the one that I bought. We actually, on another episode, we have a gentleman that had to take the sellers to small claims, but the husband, without revealing too much, the husband cleaned up his side of it, so it was only really the one side that ended up being sued. And same thing, she just let the house go, caused a lot of damage, hid the damage, which is why it became such an issue. And it's too bad because it's a mutual asset. Everybody could make money together and move on with their lives, but when feelings get involved, things go sideways so quickly.
Yeah, scorched earth almost, right? Like,
Scorched earth. Yeah.
They try to shift some of the things down the line, but there's a new family moving in, and that strife, it's going to now impact the other people when they have to come in and, now I have to fix all these things after I just bought a house.
Yeah. They don't, I think when that happens, like you said, whether it's mental health issues or it's just broken heart or whatever, high emotion sales, it's good to have a contingency plan in place if you're lucky enough, if the market allows you to put in things like holdbacks. Yeah. Because you never know.
Yeah.
I find divorce sales too, when or separations, whatever, if they have children, it's usually a lot more maturely handled because they realize that this isn't the end of their relationship. That's not always the case, but with this one in particular that I just mentioned, they didn't have any kids, so it was like, who can hurt the other person the most on the way out the door? Yeah. Whereas with there's children, it's like, well, I'm going to bump into them at daycare, picking up the kids, or graduation, or whatever, future weddings, that kind of stuff.
There's a chance for less toxicity.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, we have to be more mature about things for the kids.
I think it's in your household too. Like your dad invites your mom for dinners and stuff. So
yeah. Now that everyone's kind of like older and grown past it, everyone looks out for each other a little bit.
That's kind of
hello.
Cool. Yeah. That's great. What's one thing you would like members of the public to be aware of with regards to sales involving divorce?
That's a good question.
Other than get a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's the easy one. Get a lawyer.
Well, there's human beings involved. Yeah. And we've had it before where we're in a house with buyers, and the buyers discovered by themselves that we think it's a divorce sale, and they get really excited, and they start going, we should throw them a lowball offer, and then
it's like they smell blood in the water.
And then you're like, you guys realize we could be on camera right now, right? Like it's and now you're like a lot of people have cameras in their homes now. It's pretty common, and they're jumping up and down excited about maybe getting a deal on somebody's house because they feel like they've discovered something, and it's a natural thing, but it's also like I'm sitting there going cringe because let's sidebar this for outside guys because they can still make sure you never own that home.
They're like, we found a piece of the puzzle, and you're like, baby monitors weren't there, though.
Exactly. That teddy bear's watching us right now.
It's always the teddy bear.
It's always the teddy bear. Okay, so last story out of me today. We had a divorce sale. I never actually met the wife. It was a situation where I would meet the husband, get the keys, and he's really good. He just hands me the keys and says, sell the property. Nice. Except, of course, I still have to talk to the wife, and I received a phone call, and she just told me too much, when she's saying he's got a girlfriend. She is young. She is blonde. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I'm so glad she can't see me right now. So we ended up talking because you do sometimes hear a little bit more from the hurt party, and they do want to share with you. Right. And I try to explain to them that although maybe it's not their choice to get divorced maybe, or they didn't cause the situation. And sometimes they want that recognition. So I explained to them that, look, nothing can happen without your signature. It's 50% of the transaction. I can't do anything without that. Right. So I say to them, and this works like 8% of the time, I say, would you like to sign everything first?
Great idea.
That way, you don't even have to see that person's signature on that piece of paper, and you have 100% of the control. You sign first. Yeah. I talk to you first, you sign first.
I'm totally stealing that.
So she said to me, she goes, man, that would mean so much to me. What a great idea. Thank you so much. Now, of course, I go back to the husband because that's who wants to have the divorce. And I say, look, I'm going to get her to sign first. So all you have to do is sign it after. Everything obviously gets agreed upon together. All the terms get agreed upon together. But if you get that hurt party to sign first, number one, they're usually the hardest person to get signed. So if they do sign it first, green light. And number two, it makes them feel a little bit in control. Even if it's like a false sense of security there, they get to sign it first. They don't have to see that person's signature who's forcing them to sell.
You're like, you still get a say, and you're important, and
you're important.
You're absolutely still involved. Like your signature matters because it does.
Yeah, because at that time they might feel like nothing I say or do or whatever, I have no control. I have like nothing I can't fix anything. I can't change anything. And this is my life now. Right. But if you give them a platform where you say, look, I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to, and you always go to them with whatever the decision's already made. Yeah. And you say, hey, look, we've been talking. We think this might be the best path forward. What do you think? Can I send that over to you to sign first? And they get to be put first when they may have felt like they were put last in all of the decision making. Yeah. So that's my signature move. Yeah, I know, I'm a nerd. Yeah.
No, that's great. That's good advice.
Yeah. So Jamie, thank you so much for coming out today.
Hey, my pleasure.
We're just going to sum up the day, guys. Exercise compassion, know your audience, ask ahead of time to make sure everyone's in the room. If you're a buyer, learn your audience, know that there are people there. If you're a seller, hey, we're just here to help you. We're not going to get involved. And if you are a hurt party in a situation or you don't have control, talk about signing first. Maybe that might make the difference for you so that it's kind of done on your time and you're considered as well. So that's all the tea spilling we have today. Thank you so much for coming. And we're just going to cheers to end the episode.
Little dainty teacups.
Yeah, I know they're...
Thank you for listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Massero and Shelagh Maycheck.